So, on the cover of this particular video, you will see a picture of El Pico de Orizaba. And this is a mountain that is located near Jalapa in Mexico. And you will hear another video where I befriended someone down in Jalapa, and I traveled down there and I encountered the faith of the area. I encountered the history of the area. And as we were in a beautiful park in downtown Jalapa, I looked up and I saw this mountain, and I knew that Jalapa had a mountain at its center, basically. And I looked at it and I went, well, those aren't clouds coming out of that mountain, that's smoke coming out of the mountain. And my friend said, yes, it's a volcano. And I was like, oh, lovely. And so I thought at the time that I had never seen a volcano before. However, I was not right. So in many years ago, and I can't quote the exact year, but my sister in her 20s had leukemia. And this very quickly went into a very aggressive state, and she needed a bone marrow transplant. My twin brother, her twin, not my twin brother, her twin brother, who is my brother, if that makes sense, they're twins, basically, was her donor for the bone marrow transplant. She was treated in Seattle, Washington, at a big hospital there, and that's a whole nother video in itself. But she did survive, mostly because it was her twin brother who gave her the bone marrow, and she went through a lot. She almost died. She lost a quarter of a lung and has had complications ever since, but she did make it and basically is still with us. And this is many, many years later. And so I went at that time, as she was recovering, to Seattle to visit her, and I encountered Mount Rainier. Not only did I encounter Mount Rainier, but we went on it. So I actually stood on Mount Rainier. It was snowing in June, and cold, very cold up there. And little did I know that I was on one of the most dangerous and infamous stratovolcanoes in the United States of America. Of course, I knew Mount St. Helens had erupted before that, and I knew about the Ring of Fire and all this, but I didn't know very much about the individual mountains. And so Mount Rainier is a stratovolcano. It is considered very active. And why is it considered active? Well, because it has a lot of geothermal activity. It heats groundwater. It is hot, basically. It is hot and active. Now, I want to contrast that mountain with another stratovolcano that I encountered, and that is El Pico de Orizaba down in Jalapa, Mexico. Both are stratovolcanoes, but there is a difference between the action of the tectonic plates that are located between the two. So the difference is two very different locations, two very different geologic plates and things that create different activity in the different volcanoes, but both are a stratovolcano. So what is a stratovolcano? Well, they are a very tall volcano. They are usually conical shaped. When you think of a volcano, this is what you're thinking of. And it's built, basically the conical shape is a buildup of years of hardened lava, tephra, volcanic ash, and pumice. And they usually have a very high profile, and both of these particular volcanoes are standalone volcanoes in their area that tower over and dominate large city areas. So if these erupt, they can have a pyroclastic flow, which basically, if you've seen those angry boiling ash coming out of the volcano when it explodes, that's it. And of course, that can cause a lot of damage. Plus, it blocks the sun, it disrupts aviation, and can affect the weather. And the ash from it can travel miles and miles. And both of these volcanoes have a risk of lahars. And if you've heard anything about Mount Rainier, that is one of their biggest fears. If it erupts, that there may be a massive lahars that come down from that and could just devastate the area. Well, El Pico de Orizaba is similar. However, it's worse with Mount Rainier because Mount Rainier is, first of all, El Pico de Orizaba is dormant. What does that mean? Well, it does not have the geothermal activity that Mount Rainier has. And again, that's because there's a great difference in the tectonic plates that they sit on and how those shift and how those cause a reaction in the mountains. But both, if they erupt, and the last time, I think 1836 was the last time El Pico erupted. But I think for Mount Rainier, it's been much longer. So Mount Rainier is pretty overdue. And so when I visited my friend in Jalapa and we were in the park, and I looked up and said, hey, that's smoke coming out of that volcano. I was looking at El Pico de Orizaba, and indeed it was steam venting out of the volcano. So I've looked up pictures of this volcano, and it does not always vent. It only sometimes vents. So it happened to be venting when we were there. Other examples of a stratovolcano are Mount Fuji, Mount St. Helens, which we all know blew its top several times, and Mount Vesuvius in Italy. There's a difference in the climate on both of the mountains. Now, the Pico de Orizaba is much higher mountain. And so if you climb it, it requires acclimatization, whereas Mount Rainier is not as high, and people can climb on it, hike on it without acclimatization often. So there is a difference in the height of the two. See, what have I forgotten here? I found this very interesting because I did not understand what the difference between, I saw active steam coming out of this volcano. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. And I said to my friend, but there's steam coming out of it. She says, oh, it doesn't erupt. And, well, it doesn't erupt today. I think with all volcanoes, you have to say, it doesn't erupt today. Now, there are such things as extinct volcanoes. If a volcano is extinct, it is dead. It's dead, there's no activity whatsoever. But so many volcanoes are just dormant, and dormant volcanoes can wake up. And so, anyway, also, El Pico de Orizaba has one main glacier, but Mount Rainier has 25 glaciers, and it's very cold. Mount Rainier has a maritime climate that affects it. It is very cold. It is very snowy year-round. So I was on it in June, and it was covered with snow. And so there are crevasses and things on Mount Rainier, and so special training, you have to have special training, and there are rescuers that are specially trained to rescue people on it. So that's some of the differences between the two. And both of these volcanoes are, oh, and by the way, a stratovolcano is also called a composite volcano. And both of these volcanoes are very closely watched. Mount Rainier is watched by the USGS in the Cascades area in the United States. And I think it said the global volcanic something or other. There's a global, more central to Mexico and international areas that watches El Pico de Orizaba, but they're watched. And so both of them can become bad boys if they want to. So that's the thing to know about them. I found this very interesting, and part of the reason I researched them was because I didn't totally understand it. And when I visited and even stood on Mount Rainier many years ago while I was visiting my sister, I had no idea that I was on what's considered one of the most dangerous stratovolcanoes in the United States of America. I had no idea. I didn't even know it was a volcano at that time. I just knew it was a mountain. So that's kind of interesting. And I've never stood on El Pico, but I did see it from a distance. So I hope that gives you some information about these two peaks and how they are contrasted, but they are both composite or stratovolcanoes.